I overheard my brother-in-law and his fiancée plotting to sabotage my wedding, so I crushed theirs with help from his furious exes. Brad is 27, and for as long as James can remember, he's always been the golden child in the eyes of their parents. You know the type. He's the older sibling who gets away with everything. Growing up, James told me that Brad was the kind of kid who would break something, blame it on James, and somehow get away with it every time boys will be boys, their mom would say. It wasn't just little things either. Brad would actively go out of his way to make James's life miserable. If James got a new toy for his birthday, Brad would take it and break it. If James made a new friend, Brad would swoop in, charm them, and make James feel like the outsider. As they got older, it didn't get any better. Brad would pick on James in front of his friends, calling him things like mama's boy or softy, because James wasn't into the whole macho, brooding persona Brad had going on. James, being the good guy he is, tried to brush it off, but I could tell it bothered him. Who wouldn't be hurt when your own brother treats you like crap? Now, Brad's life is, well, a mess. He hops from one dead-end job to another because he can't hold down a position for more than a few months. He's the kind of guy who walks into work late and acts surprised when he gets called out for it. He has this cocky attitude, like he's too good for rules or responsibilities, but somehow their parents still make excuses for him. Brad's just figuring things out, they'll say, as if being an inconsiderate jerk is a phase he'll eventually grow out of. When it comes to relationships, Brad's track record is even worse. He's had more girlfriends than I can count, and every single one of them left him for good reason. Brad has this ability to charm women at first. He's got the looks, the smooth talk, and that fake confidence that draws people in. But once they're hooked, he shows his true colors. He's controlling, manipulative, and an expert at gaslighting. All right, so let me tell you about the moment Stephanie entered the picture about 6 months ago because, trust me, it was a game changer. Before her, Brad's girlfriends were like revolving doors, here one day, gone the next. It was almost like a running joke in James's family. Every holiday or family event, Brad would show up with someone new, introduce them like they were the love of his life, and then a couple of months later, it was like they never existed. But Stephanie? Oh, she was different. Not in a good way, though. From the moment Brad introduced her at a family barbecue, it was clear this wasn't your average short-term fling. She had this air about her, like she thought she was better than everyone else in the room. And the way she looked at people, it wasn't curiosity or friendliness. It was pure judgment, like she was scanning the crowd for someone to pick apart. The first thing Stephanie said to me wasn't even a greeting. She walked up to where I was standing with James and said, "Oh, you're Kelly? I thought you'd be taller." I was so thrown off that I just laughed awkwardly, but James immediately went into protective mode. He gave her a look and said, "She's perfect the way she is." Stephanie just smirked and said, "I was just saying." That set the tone for how she interacted with everyone. She had this way of making snide comments that sounded like compliments if you weren't paying attention. Like when she told James's mom, "You must have been stunning when you were younger. Brad always says you were the prettiest woman in town." Or when she asked James's dad if he was finally going to retire and enjoy life, knowing full well he'd just been laid off. The worst part, Brad ate it up. He stood by her side, grinning like she was the most brilliant, charming woman in the world. For the first time, he seemed genuinely proud of the woman he was with, which made sense because they were basically the same person. They both loved stirring the pot and making themselves the center of attention. Stephanie wasn't just a mean girl, though. She was calculated. You could tell she studied people, figured out their insecurities, and then used them to her advantage. Over the next few months, every time we saw her, she managed to create drama without ever being directly involved. She'd plant little seeds of doubt or gossip, then sit back and watch the chaos unfold. One time, during a family dinner, she casually mentioned how James must have been such a mama's boy growing up, because he was so kind and sensitive. She said it like it was a compliment, but Brad jumped on it, laughing and saying, "Oh, you don't even know the half of it. He used to cry if Mom didn't cut the crusts off his sandwiches." The whole table laughed, but I could see James was uncomfortable. Stephanie just smiled sweetly, like she had no idea she'd started it. She also had a habit of trying to one-up people. If someone mentioned a new job or accomplishment, Stephanie would find a way to make it about her or Brad. Like when James told the family he'd gotten a promotion at work, everyone was genuinely happy for him, except Stephanie. She immediately turned to Brad and said, "Didn't you almost get promoted last year, babe? You totally should have if your boss wasn't such an idiot." It was like she couldn't stand the idea of anyone else getting attention. What really sealed my opinion of Stephanie, though, was when she started hanging out with James's mom more. At first, it seemed innocent. She'd join her for lunch or shopping trips, and I thought maybe she was just trying to get closer to the family. But then James's mom started acting different. She'd make these little comments about how James should call more often or how it was so nice that Brad always stayed in touch, which was a total lie. Brad only called when he needed something. I later found out from James's sister Emma that Stephanie had been subtly comparing the two brothers during her hangouts with their mom. She'd say things like, "It's so sweet how Brad always talks about how much he loves you," or "Brad was just saying how he wants to make sure you're taken care of when you get older." All lies, of course, but it worked. James's mom started seeing Brad in a more positive light, which only fueled his ego. But the real turning point was when Stephanie started planning her wedding with Brad. Yep, you heard that right, they got engaged. And it wasn't a normal, happy announcement. It was the most Brad and Stephanie thing you could imagine. They posted a photo of her hand with the ring, captioned, "When you know, you know," and tagged it with hashtags like #PowerCouple and #BetterThanFairyTale. It was so over the top that James and I couldn't stop laughing. Of course, we found out later that Brad had proposed right after James told the family he was planning to propose to me. It was no coincidence. Brad couldn't stand the idea of James being in the spotlight, so he had to make his move first. And Stephanie? She probably loved the drama of it all. What really rubbed salt in the wound was how they acted afterward. When James proposed to me, we were over the moon, but as soon as we shared the news with his family, Brad and Stephanie made it about them. Stephanie kept saying things like, "Oh my gosh, maybe we'll all get married in the same year. That would be so fun." And Brad, with his usual smugness, said, "Guess we're just a family of overachievers, huh?" Stephanie's wedding planning became her entire personality. Every time we saw her, she'd find a way to bring it up, even if it wasn't relevant. If someone complimented my ring, she'd immediately start talking about her venue or her dress. And the worst part? She wasn't just showing off, she was subtly trying to undermine our plans. One time, she cornered me at a family dinner and said, "You're going to love wedding planning. It's so stressful, but so worth it. Just make sure you don't let it take over your life." Oh, and I'd avoid pastel colors. They're so overdone. I hadn't even mentioned what colors I was considering, but guess what? I'd been leaning toward pastels. It was around this time that I started noticing how little Stephanie actually knew about Brad's past. She seemed completely unaware of his long list of exes and the drama he'd left behind. She talked about him like he was some kind of saint, saying things like, "Brad has such high standards. That's why he didn't settle down before me." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. High standards? The guy had dated half the county and cheated on most of them. Stephanie was living in a bubble, completely blind to who Brad really was, and honestly, I couldn't wait for that bubble to burst. If she wanted to be part of the Brad show, she'd have to deal with everything that came with it. Little did she know her big debut was just around the corner, and it wasn't going to go the way she thought. Okay, so let's get to the good part. By now, you probably have a pretty good idea of how Brad and Stephanie operate. They're not just the type of people who crave attention. They're the kind who need to dominate every single moment, even if it means ruining someone else's. And when it came to our engagement, they weren't content with just stealing the spotlight. No, they wanted to sabotage us completely. It started at our engagement party. James and I had planned this small get-together with close friends and family to celebrate the big news. Nothing fancy, just some food, music, and good vibes. Of course, we invited Brad and Stephanie because, well, they're family, and we figured it'd look bad if we didn't. In hindsight, I wish we'd just forgotten to send their invite. When they arrived, it was clear they weren't there to celebrate us. Stephanie showed up in this glittery dress that screamed, "Look at me!" And Brad had his usual smug grin plastered across his face. Within 5 minutes, they were already working the room, talking to everyone about their engagement. It was exhausting. At one point, I overheard Stephanie telling one of James's aunts, "We're so excited to get married before the end of the year. It's going to be the wedding of the century." She conveniently forgot to mention that their engagement had only happened after James proposed to me. The real drama started about halfway through the night. I'd gone into the laundry room to grab some extra napkins, and as I was walking back, I heard voices coming from the hallway near our guest bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I recognized Brad's voice and, well, curiosity got me. I stopped in my tracks and listened. It was Brad and Stephanie, and they were whispering about our wedding. At first, I thought they were just gossiping or making snide remarks, which wouldn't have surprised me. But as I listened, I realized they weren't just talking trash. They were planning something. Brad was saying, "We need to make sure our wedding is the one everyone remembers. They think they're so perfect, but we'll show them who the real stars of this family are." Stephanie laughed and said, "Don't worry, babe. I've got a plan. We'll make her think we're on her side, like we're rooting for her. Then, when the wedding comes, we'll hit her where it hurts." I could feel my stomach twist as they kept talking. Their plan was bigger than I could have imagined. Stephanie wanted to get close to my bridesmaids, pretending to be friendly and helpful, only to stir up drama between them. She even said, "I'll make sure they're so busy fighting with each other, they won't even have time to focus on her." Brad chimed in with his own idea. He wanted to convince James's parents to pressure us into inviting more people to the wedding, people we didn't even know, just to throw off our guest list and create chaos. But the worst part? Stephanie had this grand finale planned. She wanted to give a surprise speech during the reception, pretending it was heartfelt but actually using it to humiliate me in front of everyone. "I'll make her look like a total bridezilla," she said, laughing. "People will be talking about it for years." I stood there frozen as they went on and on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't just trying to ruin our day, they were trying to tear us down completely. And the way they talked about it, like it was some kind of game, made my blood boil. Who does that? When they finally left the hallway, I slipped back into the party like nothing had happened. I didn't want to cause a scene, not yet anyway. I spent the rest of the night trying to act normal, but inside, I was fuming. As soon as everyone left, I sat James down and told him everything. At first, he thought I was exaggerating. "Maybe they were just joking," he said, always trying to see the best in people. But when I repeated their exact words, his face went pale. "They're unbelievable," he muttered, shaking his head. "Why can't they just leave us alone?" We spent hours talking about what to do. James wanted to confront them right away, but I stopped him. I knew Brad and Stephanie would deny everything and twist it around to make us look like the bad guys. That's their specialty, playing the victim. Instead, I suggested we let them think they were getting away with it. If they wanted to play dirty, we'd play smarter. We decided to act like we hadn't heard anything. James would keep his distance from Brad, and I'd be polite but distant with Stephanie. Meanwhile, I started making plans of my own. If they wanted to mess with our wedding, I'd make sure their wedding was the one nobody forgot, for all the wrong reasons. I started digging into Brad's past relationships. He had a long list of ex-girlfriends, and I figured some of them might still hold a grudge. It wasn't hard to find them. Social media made it easy. I reached out to a few, carefully explaining who I was and why I was contacting them. To my surprise, almost all of them were more than willing to talk. Turns out Brad had burned a lot of bridges, and these women were more than happy to help me expose him. One of them, Amy, told me about how Brad had cheated on her with 2 different women at the same time. "He made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting anything," she said. "I can't believe Stephanie's falling for his act." Another ex, Becca, laughed when I told her what I was planning. "Oh, I'm in," she said. "That guy deserves whatever's coming to him." Within a week, I'd assembled a small army of Brad's scorned exes. We created a group chat to coordinate everything, and let me tell you, these women were hilarious. The way they roasted Brad was better than any stand-up routine I'd ever seen. But we weren't just there to laugh. We had a mission. When Brad and Stephanie's wedding day rolled around, we were ready. By the time their wedding invitations went out, I knew everything I needed to know. Stephanie was oblivious to Brad's history. She genuinely thought he was some kind of misunderstood prince. I almost felt bad for her, but then I remembered how she'd laughed about humiliating me at my own wedding. Whatever sympathy I might have had disappeared. Their wedding was set for a month before ours, and it was shaping up to be as over-the-top as you'd expect. They bragged about their fancy venue, their guest list, and how perfect everything was going to be. Stephanie even made a point of telling me how stressful planning a wedding was, as if I hadn't already started working on mine. "Don't worry, Kelly," she said with a fake smile. "I'm sure your wedding will be cute in its own way." I just smiled back, knowing she had no idea what was coming. Brad and Stephanie wanted to play dirty? Fine, but they were about to learn that messing with us was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. All right, so let me walk you through Brad and Stephanie's wedding day, because not only was it the most satisfying train wreck I've ever witnessed, but I was there to see it all unfold. Their wedding was everything I hoped it would be, a total disaster, but one where they couldn't run away from the mess they'd created. James and I showed up, acting like the supportive family members we were supposed to be. I wore a simple dress, and James looked sharp in his suit. We didn't want to draw attention to ourselves, but I had a hard time keeping a straight face, knowing what was about to go down. The venue was packed with people. Brad and Stephanie had been bragging about inviting colleagues, extended family, friends, and of course, Stephanie's parents' wealthy social circle. The place was decked out to the nines. Massive floral arrangements, glittering chandeliers, and the kind of over-the-top decor that screamed, "We spent too much money on this." Stephanie's dad had clearly bankrolled the entire thing, and Brad, predictably, was basking in the attention like he was some self-made mogul. James and I took our seats near the back, nodding and smiling politely to other guests while waiting for the show to start. The ceremony began with the usual grand entrance of the bridal party, and then Stephanie made her big appearance. Her dress sparkled so much it was borderline blinding, and she walked down the aisle with a smug smile, clearly loving every second of being the center of attention. Everything was going smoothly, well, for the first 10 minutes. The officiant welcomed everyone, and then Brad and Stephanie stood side by side, holding hands and beaming. That's when Amy made her move. Amy stood up from her seat near the back of the room, dressed in a sleek, elegant gown that wouldn't have been out of place in a bridal party. At first, the guests thought she was part of the ceremony, maybe someone bringing a reading or a blessing. But then she walked straight up to Brad and Stephanie, stopping right in front of them. "Brad," she said, her voice clear and steady, "before you make any promises today, I think everyone here deserves to know the kind of promises you've broken." You could hear a pin drop. Brad's face drained of all color, and Stephanie's brow furrowed as she tried to figure out what was going on. Before anyone could stop her, Amy pulled out an envelope and handed it to Brad. He hesitated, but Stephanie snatched it and tore it open, pulling out a series of handwritten letters. "What is this?" Stephanie snapped, flipping through the pages. "They're love letters," Amy explained, her voice calm but cutting. "Letters Brad wrote to me while we were dating. Oh, and to several other women while he was also dating me." The crowd erupted into whispers. Stephanie's hands shook as she skimmed one of the letters, her eyes narrowing with every word. Brad tried to grab the envelope, but Amy held firm. "You might want to let her finish," she said with a cold smile. "It gets better." Becca, the second ex, stood up then, striding confidently down the aisle. She too was dressed impeccably, and she held an envelope of her own. "Hi, Stephanie," Becca said sweetly, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "I'm Becca. I dated Brad for about 6 months. During that time, he told me he was saving up for our future. Turns out he was just borrowing money from me to take another girl out on dates." Stephanie's jaw dropped. "Is this true?" she hissed at Brad. "How many of these are there?" Brad stammered. It's not what it looks like." "They're lying." One by one, more of Brad's exes stood up, each carrying their own envelope. Lisa walked down the aisle next, her heels clicking loudly against the marble floor. She handed her envelope to Stephanie, who was now visibly shaking. "You don't know me," Lisa said, "but I know Brad all too well. He promised me the world while he was sneaking off to see other women. Here's a list of their names. He gave them cute little nicknames in his phone so I wouldn't figure it out." At this point, the officiant looked completely lost, and the guests were openly gossiping. Phones were out, capturing every second of the chaos. Stephanie's parents looked horrified, whispering furiously to each other, while Brad's parents sat frozen, staring at their son as if seeing him for the first time. Danielle was the last to stand up. She didn't have an envelope but carried a single sheet of paper. "This one's my favorite," she said, holding up what turned out to be a printed screenshot of a dating app conversation. "This is Brad matching with me on Tinder while he was already living with one of his exes." "Recognize this, Brad?" The crowd gasped. Stephanie threw the envelopes onto the floor, her face red with fury. "How could you?" she spat at Brad. "Are these women lying, or is this just a giant coincidence?" Brad looked like a deer caught in headlights. "I can explain," he stammered. "They're all just jealous. They're trying to ruin my life." "Oh, please," Amy snapped. "You ruined your own life, Brad. We're just here to make sure no one else gets hurt." Despite the chaos, Stephanie didn't storm off. No, she stood there, fuming, glaring at Brad like she wanted to murder him. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "We'll deal with this later. Let's just finish the ceremony." The officiant awkwardly cleared his throat and tried to regain control of the room. Shall we continue?" he asked, glancing nervously at the bride and groom. Brad nodded weakly, while Stephanie forced a tight-lipped smile. The guests were still whispering, and a few even left, clearly too uncomfortable to stick around. But the ceremony limped on, the vows rushed and robotic, and the atmosphere completely ruined. When it was finally over, the reception began, but no one cared about the couple anymore. The gossip was all about Brad's past. Every table was buzzing with conversation about the exes, the letters, and the lies. People kept glancing at Brad and Stephanie, who were doing their best to act like everything was fine. It wasn't. James and I stayed just long enough to enjoy the awkwardness before quietly slipping out. On the way home, we laughed until our sides hurt. Brad and Stephanie had wanted their wedding to be unforgettable, and in a way, they got their wish, just not the way they'd planned. After Brad and Stephanie's wedding disaster, you'd think they'd crawl into a hole and try to lay low for a while. But nope, they came out swinging, desperate to figure out how their perfect day had turned into a complete circus. I mean, I'll give them credit. They didn't pack up and leave town out of embarrassment, but honestly, maybe they should have. The first few days after the wedding were pretty quiet on our end. James and I carried on as usual, trying not to laugh every time we thought about what had happened. We didn't hear a peep from Brad or Stephanie, but the group chats were buzzing. Apparently, everyone in their social circle was talking about the exes, the letters, and the sheer audacity of the whole thing. Stephanie's parents were furious, not at Brad, which they should have been, but at the humiliation they felt in front of their fancy friends. By midweek, the silence broke. Stephanie started posting vague, passive-aggressive comments on social media about fake people and how she'd never let anyone ruin her happiness. Brad, on the other hand, wasn't subtle at all. He posted a whole rant about how some jealous, bitter women had tried to sabotage him and Stephanie but failed because love always wins. The comment section was a mix of people supporting him, mainly his clueless friends, and others hinting that maybe he wasn't as innocent as he claimed. James and I kept our heads down, liking a few generic posts here and there to avoid suspicion. But then Brad and Stephanie started sniffing around. It started with a random call from Brad. James answered it while we were making dinner, putting the phone on speaker. So, Brad started awkwardly. "How'd you guys enjoy the wedding?" James gave me a look, but played it cool. "It was nice," he said. "The venue was beautiful." "Yeah, thanks," Brad replied, his tone shifting. "So, you guys didn't notice anything weird? Like during the ceremony? Weird?" "No, why?" James asked, perfectly innocent. "Oh, nothing," Brad said quickly. "Just thought you might have heard some rumors or something. You know, people can be jealous." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Brad was fishing and James wasn't taking the bait. "I didn't hear anything," James said casually. "Everything seemed fine to me." Brad let out a forced laugh. Yeah, that's what I thought. Anyway, see you around." He hung up and James and I burst out laughing, but that wasn't the end of it. Over the next few days, Brad and Stephanie started asking other family members if they knew anything about the exes showing up. Word got back to us that they were convinced someone had orchestrated it but had no idea who. Stephanie apparently suspected one of her bridesmaids, but Brad had his sights set on James and me. "They think we did it," I told James one night after his sister Emma called to update us. "Let them think it," James said, smirking. "They can't prove anything." For a while, it felt like we were in the clear. That is, until James's parents called and asked us to come over for dinner. Now, let me tell you something about James's parents. They've always tried to stay neutral when it comes to Brad and James's sibling drama. But I could tell from the moment we walked into their house that they were gearing up for a serious conversation. Dinner was tense. Normally, his mom would be chatting about her garden or their latest Netflix obsession, but she barely said a word. His dad was equally quiet, which is rare for him. After dinner, his mom cleared her throat and said, "So, we've been hearing some things about Brad's wedding." James played dumb. "Oh, what kind of things?" She sighed. "Brad and Stephanie are saying someone might have had something to do with what happened during the ceremony. They think it was you two." I felt James tense next to me, but I decided to take the lead. "Why would they think that?" I asked, keeping my tone light. His dad frowned. "Well, you have to admit, it's a little suspicious. Those women showing up, it's not something that just happens. And you've never exactly gotten along with Brad." James exhaled and leaned forward. "All right, fine. It was us." His mom gasped and his dad just stared at him, his jaw tightening. "You're serious?" his dad asked. "Yes," I said. "We planned it. But before you get mad, you need to know why." We explained everything. How I'd overheard Brad and Stephanie plotting to humiliate us at our wedding, how they wanted to ruin my relationships with my bridesmaids and make a spectacle out of us during our reception. I told them about the awful things they said, how they laughed about it like it was some big joke, and how I knew we had to stop them before they got the chance. James chimed in, saying, "We didn't want to do this, but they left us no choice. They've been trying to one-up us and tear us down for years." This wasn't about revenge. It was about protecting our day. His mom looked horrified, not at us, but at the idea that Brad and Stephanie would do something so cruel. "Are you sure they were really planning all that?" she asked. "I heard them say it," I said firmly. "Every word. They didn't care about how it would hurt us. They just wanted to make our wedding a joke." His dad rubbed his temples, clearly trying to process everything. "You shouldn't have stooped to their level," he finally said, "but I can't say I blame you." His mom nodded slowly. "It's hard to hear, but if what you're saying is true, I understand why you did it. I just wish things hadn't come to this." The conversation ended on a tense but understanding note. They didn't condone what we did, but they couldn't deny that Brad and Stephanie had pushed us to the edge. We left their house feeling a little lighter, knowing they weren't going to defend Brad this time. Over the next few days, things settled down. Brad and Stephanie were still sniffing around for answers, but James's parents didn't give them any hints. Emma grandma called us to say their mom had pulled Brad aside and told him to stop harassing the family about the wedding. Apparently, Brad had the nerve to act offended, saying he was the victim, but she shut him down pretty quickly. As for Stephanie, she started posting less and less on social media, and when she did, it was all overly cheerful, like she was trying to prove how happy she was. But the cracks were starting to show. A mutual friend told us she'd been complaining to anyone who'd listen about how someone ruined her big day and how unfair it was. Meanwhile, her parents were pressuring Brad to fix things because they didn't want their family name dragged through the mud. James and I, on the other hand, were focused on our wedding. With Brad and Stephanie's chaos behind us, we could finally enjoy the planning process. We kept everything low-key and intimate, making sure only the people we trusted were involved. And the best part? We didn't have to worry about Brad and Stephanie showing up. But of course, this wouldn't be the last time they tried to insert themselves into our lives. They had one last trick up their sleeve, and while it didn't go the way they planned, it made for an unforgettable finale. It started with an odd phone call. James got a message from an old coworker he hadn't spoken to in years, congratulating him on the wedding and saying, "I'm looking forward to seeing you both there." Confused, James called him back and asked how he knew about the wedding. Turns out, Brad and Stephanie had somehow gotten hold of our guest list and venue details and sent out fake invitations under other people's names. At first, we didn't even believe it. Who does that? But when a couple of other guests mentioned they'd received duplicate RSVPs with slightly different details, we knew Brad and Stephanie were behind it. Their plan was obvious: sneak in under fake names, cause a scene, and ruin our day. Thankfully, we were prepared. After Brad and Stephanie's wedding fiasco, we decided to take every precaution to keep them out of ours. We'd hired security for the venue, and every guest was required to check in with ID at the door. It felt a little extreme at first, but now we were grateful we'd gone the extra mile. On the day of the wedding, everything started off perfectly. James and I were both excited and nervous in that giddy pre-wedding way. Guests began arriving, and security was doing an amazing job keeping things organized. It was shaping up to be the best day of our lives. And then they showed up. I didn't see it happen myself, but I heard about it from our wedding planner, who came rushing over to me with wide eyes. "We have a situation at the entrance," she said. "There's a couple trying to get in, claiming to be family." My stomach dropped. "Is it Brad and Stephanie?" I asked. She nodded. James and I had already agreed to let security handle them, so I told her to stick to the plan. "Just make sure they don't get in," I said. "We're not dealing with them today." Meanwhile, at the entrance, Brad was putting on his best performance. Dressed in a sharp suit, he was trying to convince the security team that he was James's brother and had every right to be there. "This is family business," he argued, his voice growing louder with every word. "You can't keep me out of my own brother's wedding." Stephanie stood next to him in a sleek dress, arms crossed and looking furious. "We're on the guest list," she snapped. "This is ridiculous." The head of security, a no-nonsense guy we'd hired specifically for situations like this, didn't budge. "Your names aren't on the list," he said firmly, "and without an invitation or proper identification, I can't let you in." Brad's face turned red, and he launched into a rant about how family doesn't need an invitation. Stephanie, meanwhile, completely lost her cool. "This isn't over," she screamed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at the security guard. "You'll regret this." The guard calmly escorted them back to their car, ignoring their threats and protests. By the time they finally drove off, half the guests were already inside, oblivious to the drama unfolding outside. The rest of the day was perfect. I mean, absolutely perfect. Once James and I were standing at the altar, nothing else mattered. Surrounded by friends and family who genuinely loved and supported us, we celebrated our relationship and the life we were building together. The ceremony was beautiful, emotional, and exactly what we dreamed of. A few days after the wedding, word started getting around about what had happened at the entrance. Some guests had seen Brad and Stephanie being turned away and had no problem sharing the details. The story spread fast, and people were eating it up. Apparently, Brad and Stephanie had been ranting to anyone who would listen about how unfair it was that they weren't allowed in, but instead of getting sympathy, they just made themselves look even more pathetic. It didn't take long for the cracks in their relationship to show. Stephanie, who had always prided herself on appearances, was mortified by how they'd been humiliated twice now. About a month after the wedding, we heard from a mutual friend that Stephanie had finally had enough. She dug a little deeper into Brad's past and found out just how much he'd lied to her about his finances, his relationships, and even his role in their own wedding planning. Apparently, she confronted him in a spectacular blowout fight, packed her things, and left him. From what we heard, Brad was devastated, or as devastated as someone like him could be. He tried calling her, messaging her, even showing up at her parents' house, but she was done. For the first time in his life, Brad was facing the consequences of his actions, and there was no one left to clean up his mess. As for James and me, we're happier than ever. Our wedding was everything we'd hoped for, and we've spent the months since enjoying married life without Brad and Stephanie's drama weighing us down. Cutting them out of our lives was the best decision we ever made. They tried to ruin our happiness, but all they did was destroy their own. Sometimes poetic justice isn't just satisfying, it's absolutely necessary.
I overheard my wife call me replaceable, so I exposed her dating life in front of her friends and served the divorce papers. Hey Reddit, I've been sitting here for about an hour trying to figure out how to start this. I'm not great at writing stuff down, but I need to get this off my chest and maybe get some advice. Sorry if this is all over the place. So, I've been with my wife, I'll call her Mel, for 6 years now, married for 3 of those. We met in college, dated for a while, got married. You know, the usual story. I always thought we were doing pretty well. Sure, we had some arguments about money and stuff. But I figured that was normal. Man, was I wrong. Last Friday night changed everything. Mel invited some of her friends over to our place. They do this thing where they get together every couple of weeks to catch up. Usually I just stay in my home office and work or play games, but this time I came down to grab some snacks from the kitchen. I could hear them all talking in the living room, Mel, her best friend Jen, and a couple of other girls from her work. They were talking about relationships, marriages, and whatever. I wasn't really paying attention until I heard my name. Jen was in the middle of some dumb hypothetical, her voice all casual, like this was just some fun little game to play. She said, "But seriously, Mel, what if someone better came along? What would you do then?" I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop at first, but my name caught my ear, and, well, screw it. If they were talking about me, I had a right to listen. Then Mel, my wife, didn't even hesitate, didn't even pretend to think about it. She just went, honestly, just look at Tom. Like I was some outdated phone model she was sick of but too lazy to replace. Then she laughed, like it was so obvious, and said, "He's fine, I guess, but if someone with more drive, better prospects came along, yeah, I'd probably upgrade." They all laughed, like it was the funniest thing ever. My own wife, basically telling her friends I'm her starter husband or something. But she didn't stop there. Nope, she started listing all these things she wished were better about me. I was baffled. Who says this? I felt like I was some damn second-hand car she was waiting to sell the moment something shinier rolled into the lot. Apparently, I'm too safe and boring. I don't make enough money to give her the lifestyle she wants. Our house isn't as nice as her friend Sarah's new place. My car is embarrassing. It's a 2020 Honda Civic, a perfectly good car, by the way. I'm not ambitious enough because I've been at the same company for 4 years. I just stood there in the kitchen, listening to all this, like, you know when you're watching a movie and something really messed up happens, and you're just frozen? That's how I felt. My wife just casually telling her friends she'd trade me in for a better model. The worst part? None of her friends even disagreed. They were all like, yeah, I get that, and you deserve better, and stuff like that. One of them even said, at least he's good with the house stuff, like I'm some kind of butler or something. I must have stood there for about 10 minutes while they picked apart everything about me. My job. I work as a mechanical engineer, steady job, decent pay. My clothes. Apparently I dress like a dad, even though we don't have kids, even the way I laugh, too loud. Since when is that a problem? The thing is, I've always supported Mel. When she wanted to quit her job to try starting her own business, I covered all the bills for 8 months, until she decided she didn't like it anymore. When she wanted to go back to school for her master's degree, I paid for it. That car she drives, that's so much nicer than mine. Yeah, I make the payments on that too. But listening to her talk to her friends, you'd think I was some lazy bum who just sits around playing video games all day. She even complained that I spend too much time working. The same work that pays for everything she wants. I ended up going back to my office without getting any snacks. I couldn't eat anyway. I just sat there staring at my computer screen trying to process everything. Like, how long has she felt this way? Has she been telling her friends this stuff all along? Is this what she really thinks of me? All these memories started popping up in my head. Times when she made little comments about other guys having better jobs or nicer things. How she always seems embarrassed. When we run into her work friends, the way she keeps tagging fancy houses and cars on Instagram and sending them to me with messages like someday or goals. I always thought she was just dreaming big or whatever. Now I'm thinking she's been trying to tell me I'm not good enough this whole time. And yeah, maybe I should have picked up on it sooner, but when you love someone, you don't want to see that kind of stuff, you know? Looking back, there were probably tons of signs I missed, but hearing her actually say it out loud to her friends, that hit differently. It really makes you question everything. I started thinking about all the stuff I do for her, all the ways I try to make her happy, and what do I get back? Apparently, I'm just some placeholder until someone better comes along. But I couldn't just pretend everything was normal. I tried for maybe an hour after her friends left, just sat in my office, thinking about everything, reading your comments, trying to figure out what to do. Around midnight, I finally worked up the nerve to talk to her. Her friends had all gone home, and she was in our bedroom, getting ready for bed, like nothing happened, like she hadn't just told everyone she'd trade me in for a better guy if she got the chance. I walked in and just straight up asked her, "Did you mean what you said to your friends about upgrading from me?" You guys should have seen how fast her face changed. First she looked confused, then shocked, then she tried to laugh it off. "Oh my God, were you listening to us? It was just girl talk." "Don't be so sensitive. Just girl talk." That's what she called it. Like somehow that makes it okay to tell your friends you're actively looking to replace your husband. I told her I heard everything. The comments about my job, my car, how I'm not ambitious enough, all of it. You know what she did? She tried to turn it around on me. "Well, if you're going to spy on private conversations, you're going to hear things you don't like." That's what she said. Like I'm the bad guy for hearing her trash talk me in our own house. Then she started with this whole thing about how I'm taking it too seriously, and you know how the girls get when we're together, and we were just joking around. But I kept thinking about how none of it sounded like jokes. You know when someone's joking, and when they're saying what they really think, but trying to cover it up? So, I told her, even if you're joking, you should still respect me in front of your friends, because that's the bare minimum, right? You don't just casually humiliate your husband like it's some kind of game. But she just rolled her eyes. Like I was the one making a big deal out of nothing. Like I was the problem for expecting some damn basic decency. I asked her straight up, "Do you actually want to be with me? Or am I just convenient until something better comes along?" She got mad then, started crying, fake tears, looking back, and saying stuff like, "I can't believe you'd question my love for you, and you're being so insecure, and maybe this is why I feel stuck sometimes." That last one really got me. Stuck? After everything I've done for her? I basically laid it all out, how I've supported her through everything, paid for her master's degree, covered all the bills when she wanted to try her business thing, bought her car, everything. You know what she said? "Oh, so now you're keeping score? Real nice, Tom, real nice." This is exactly what I was talking about with the girls. You don't understand what I need emotionally. You just throw money at everything and think that's enough. I was like, what? You're the one who's always talking about wanting more money, a bigger house, a better car. I'm the one who's been trying to make you happy this whole time, but she wouldn't hear it. Kept going on about how I'm twisting her words and how she didn't mean it like that, and how I never understand her. We went back and forth for about an hour. Every time I tried to talk about what I heard, she'd either 1. Say I was taking it wrong, 2. Try to make it my fault somehow, 3. Start crying and saying I was attacking her, or 4. Change the subject completely. Finally, she said, "Fine, you want me to say I'm sorry? I'm sorry. Happy now, can we go to bed?" Like, that fixes everything. Like, she didn't just admit to everyone that she's basically waiting for a better offer to come along. I ended up sleeping in the guest room. She texted me at about 2 in the morning saying, "Thanks for making me feel terrible, and hope you're happy now that you've ruined our night." I didn't respond. What's even the point? She clearly doesn't get why I'm upset, or worse, she gets it but doesn't care. This morning was weird. She acted like nothing happened. Made coffee, asked what I wanted for dinner later. Normal stuff, but I noticed she kept checking her phone more than usual. Maybe I'm paranoid now, but it got me thinking, is she already looking for that upgrade she talked about? I tried to work from home today but couldn't focus, kept replaying everything in my head. I started looking back at old photos on my phone, found this one from our wedding day. We both looked so happy. Now I'm wondering if she was thinking about upgrading even back then. The more I think about it, the more stuff I remember. Like how she always wants me to go to her work events, but then acts weird when I'm there, or how she never posts photos of us together on her Instagram anymore, or how she's been working late more often lately. Maybe I'm reading too much into everything now, but after hearing what she really thinks of me, I don't know what to believe anymore. At that point, I didn't know what to do next. Part of me wanted to brush it off, but another part kept asking, what's there to fix? She straight up said she'd leave me for someone better. How do you come back from that? I just acted normal through the following day, but I noticed that her phone addiction got worse, way worse. She's basically glued to it now, always typing away, but the second I walk near her she flips it over or locks the screen. And she's got this new thing where she takes calls in another room, says it's work stuff. But since when does work need so many private conversations? It's not just that. She's even stopped giving the bare minimum in our relationship. No more small check-ins, no more asking how my day was, no more little moments of affection. It's like she's physically here but mentally somewhere else. Somewhere way more interesting than me. Hell, half the time I feel like I'm just background noise in my own house. So, the other day, I was paying our bills, as usual, and I noticed something that made me feel like an idiot. I've been handling all our major expenses, the mortgage, utilities, both our car payments, insurance, everything. Meanwhile, Mel's salary just goes into her personal account. She throws maybe a couple $100 toward groceries sometimes, but that's it. When I brought this up, she got super defensive, saying stuff like, "We agreed this arrangement works best, and you know I'm saving for our future." Yeah, right, our future. The one where she replaces me with someone better. She's been canceling our plans a lot too. Last week, we were supposed to have dinner together on Wednesday, something we've done every week since we got married. She texted me at 4:30, saying she had to work late, but then I saw her coworker's Instagram story showing half the office leaving for happy hour at 3. When I asked her about it later, she said she forgot about the work thing and didn't want to make me feel bad. Money's become a weird issue too. She used to at least pretend to care about our budget. Now she's spending like crazy. New clothes, expensive makeup, salon visits every other week. When I mentioned maybe cutting back since I'm paying for everything, she started crying about how I'm financially controlling and holding her back. Holding her back from what, exactly? Spending all my money while she hoards hers? I tried talking to my best friend Mike about all this. He got quiet for a minute, then told me something I didn't know. Apparently, he and his wife saw Mel at this fancy restaurant downtown last week. She was dressed up way more than she ever does when we go out. Mike's wife wanted to go say hi. But before they could, some guy came and sat down at Mel's table. Mike said he figured I knew about it and didn't want to cause drama by mentioning it. That same night, Mel told me she was having dinner with her sister Kay. When I casually mentioned running into Mike downtown, she didn't even flinch, just said, "Oh, that's nice," and changed the subject. The lying is so easy for her now. I've started noticing other changes too. She's bought all these new outfits but never wears them at home or when we go out together. Her gym schedule makes no sense, supposedly going at 6 in the morning some days, but her car is still in the driveway when I leave at 7:30. She comes home smelling like perfume she doesn't own, always has some story ready about where she's been, but the details never quite add up. The weird thing is, when her family visits, she acts like everything's perfect. Last Sunday her parents came over for dinner. Suddenly she's all lovey-dovey, sitting next to me, touching my arm when she talks, laughing at everything I say. The second they left, she went right back to barely acknowledging me. I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. Like, am I just paranoid now because of what I heard her say to her friends, or have I been blind this whole time? The more I think about it, the more obvious it seems she's been checking out of this marriage for a while. That conversation I overheard wasn't just random complaining, it was her telling her friends what she really thinks. The most messed up part? She still expects me to handle everything, pay all the bills, fix stuff around the house, deal with the car maintenance, everything a husband should do. But the second I expect anything from her, even just basic honesty about where she's been, I'm suffocating her. I kept thinking about something my dad told me when I was younger. He said actions tell you everything you need to know about how someone feels about you. Well, Mel's actions are pretty clear now. I'm just a convenience to her, someone to pay the bills and keep the house running while she does whatever she wants. But everything changed one day when my laptop died completely. Just wouldn't turn on at all. I had this super important work presentation the next day, and all my files were on there. I was freaking out because I needed to finish some edits, and Mel has this nice work laptop she brings home. I asked if I could borrow it for an hour, tops, just to access my cloud drive and fix the presentation. She got super weird about it, said she needed to clean up work stuff first and that she'd set it up for me later, but she had yoga class, yeah right, and rushed out before doing anything. She left her laptop bag right there in the living room though. Now, I've never gone through her stuff before, never wanted to, but I really needed to fix this presentation, and she'd logged into my laptop plenty of times before when she needed it, so I figured it wasn't a big deal to use hers. We're married, right? I opened up Chrome to access my cloud drive, and you know how it shows your most visited sites? There was Tinder. Right there, not even hidden. Next to it, some dating site I've never heard of, and her email was open with a bunch of messages from guys. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped her laptop. There were all these conversations with different guys. She had profiles on multiple sites. But the worst part? In all of them, she listed herself as separated and looking to upgrade. She'd written this whole thing about how she was stuck in a stagnant marriage and ready to meet someone who matches her ambition. Someone who could give her the lifestyle she deserves. The same stuff she'd said to her friends that night. But now she was advertising it to every guy in a 50-mile radius. I just sat there, reading message after message, guys telling her she deserves better, her complaining about me, setting up meetings at hotels. Some of these conversations went back months. I kept looking until I noticed something else. She had her Google Calendar open in another tab. All these yoga classes and girls' nights and work events, they lined up perfectly with her dating app meetups. But there's one conversation that got me throwing up. A guy telling her how good the night was. I knew I was done with everything related to her after seeing this. I started taking pictures of everything with my phone, not because I wanted to, but because I knew she'd deny it all if I didn't have proof. The whole time I'm doing this, my hands are shaking, and I feel sick to my stomach. Then I found the worst part. She had this folder in her Google Drive called New Life Planning. Inside were screenshots of houses she liked, cars she wanted, even some kind of budget spreadsheet. But it was all calculated with way more money than I make. She had all these notes about the kind of guy she was looking for, how much he should earn, what kind of car he should drive, where he should live. It was like reading a shopping list, but instead of groceries, she was shopping for my replacement. And get this, she had a whole section about how to maximize assets during a divorce. She'd been researching divorce lawyers and alimony laws, planning it all out while still living off my money. I managed to finish my work presentation somehow, but I honestly don't remember doing it. I put everything back exactly how I found it. When she came home from yoga, I just watched her lie about where she'd been. She even made up this whole story about this great class she'd just taken. Meanwhile, I knew she'd actually been meeting some guy named Brad at a coffee shop. The next few days were surreal. I had to act normal while knowing everything, watching her text these guys right in front of me, probably thinking she's so clever, listening to her make up excuses about where she's going. The whole time, I'm thinking about all those messages I saw, all those plans she's making, all those lies. Here's the really messed up thing. In some of her messages to these guys, she talks about how faithful she is, how she'd never cheat and is waiting until she finds the right guy before leaving her marriage. Like somehow that makes it better. She's literally shopping for my replacement while living in my house and spending my money. But instead of confronting Mel right away, I decided to play the long game. I talked to a lawyer, found this guy I'll call Dave who specializes in divorces. I showed him everything I discovered. He gave me some solid advice about protecting myself. Turns out Mel's new life planning folder might actually help me. It shows she's been planning to leave for ages while letting me support her completely. Dave helped me make a detailed list of everything I needed to do. First up was money. I've been handling all our finances for years, so making changes wasn't too hard. I opened a new account at a different bank, started moving my paycheck there instead of our joint account, and left just enough in the joint account for basic bills. When Mel noticed the joint account was lower than usual, I used her own excuses against her, told her work was getting weird about overtime lately, and we needed to budget better. She freaked out a bit, started saying stuff about needing money for her personal expenses. I just shrugged and said, "Times are tough." Funny how she talks about wanting someone with more money but can't handle having less access to mine. I started documenting everything too, every time she lies about where she's going, every weird expense, every late-night work event. I've got this whole spreadsheet now. Dave says it'll help show a pattern when we go to court. I even started keeping track of when her car is gone versus when she claims to be places. The numbers don't add up, at all. The really interesting part has been slowly backing away from all the stuff I used to do for her. She had this whole routine of me taking care of everything while she did whatever she wanted. So, I started forgetting things, like when her car needed an oil change. Usually, I'm right on top of that stuff. This time, I just didn't mention it. She had to figure it out herself. Or this thing with her parents' anniversary dinner. Every year, I'm the one who makes reservations, buys gifts, handles everything. This year? Nope. When she asked about it, I just said, "Oh, I thought you were handling that this time." She had to scramble to put something together last minute. Her parents definitely noticed the difference. I also started going to the gym, not because of her but because I needed somewhere to put all this angry energy. I found this 24-hour place near my office. Go there instead of coming straight home after work. Mel actually complained about it, said I'm not spending enough time with her. Pretty rich, coming from someone who's actively trying to replace me. The money thing really started showing results last week. She wanted to buy some expensive dress for a work event. Usually she just gets it, and I deal with the credit card bill. This time the card declined. She called me all upset and I just said, "Yeah, we need to watch our spending right now." You should have heard how fast her voice changed. She started talking about how maybe I should look for better opportunities or ask for a raise. I've been saving everything I can now. Cancelled all these random subscriptions she had that I was paying for. Switched our cable package to something cheaper. Started buying generic brands instead of the fancy stuff she likes. Every time she complains, I just remind her about budgeting and being responsible. The best part? She's starting to realize that her perfect life was only perfect because I was making it that way. All these little things I handled, the house maintenance, the car stuff, the bills, the planning. She's having to deal with them herself now, and she's terrible at it. One time, the garage door broke. Usually, I'd drop everything and fix it. This time, I just said, "We should probably call someone," and went back to watching TV. She waited 2 days, thinking I'd handle it, then finally had to call a repair service herself. Cost her $200 from her own money. Suddenly she's talking about how everything's getting so expensive. The really crazy thing is watching her try to keep up appearances. She's still on those dating apps. Yeah, I check sometimes through her laptop browser history. Still telling guys she's looking for someone more ambitious. But now she's also dealing with a car that needs maintenance, a garage door that keeps acting up, and a credit card that actually has limits. All these things I'm forgetting to do. They're building a paper trail of exactly what I brought to this marriage. And watching her slowly realize that her better life might not be so easy to find? Well, maybe I'm enjoying that a little bit. Then Mel decided to shoot her shot and fix things. She came up to me while I was just sitting on the couch, checking my phone. Probably while she was messaging guys on her dating apps, to be honest. She started talking about this weekend trip she's planning with her friends. Yeah, the same ones from that night I overheard everything, the ones who agreed I wasn't good enough. She's all excited, telling me how they're renting this super fancy lake house for a couple's weekend. Jen and Mark, Sarah and Pete, Lisa and Rob, all of them will be there. And she's like, "Tom, we should really go. It'll be so good for us." Acting all sweet, touching my arm, using that voice she does when she wants something. I almost couldn't believe it. Like, is she serious? This whole time she's been on dating apps, calling herself separated and planning her upgrade, and now she wants to play happy couples with her friends, the same friends who sat there laughing about replacing me. But then I thought about it for a second. And guys? I said yes. I told her it sounded perfect. You should have seen her face light up. She probably thought she had me wrapped around her finger again. That I was just her stupid husband who would keep paying for everything while she looked for my replacement. The funny part. The whole next week she started acting like a wife again, making actual effort. You know, suddenly she's interested in my day, making dinner for the first time in months, trying to cuddle on the couch like nothing's wrong. She even posted about me on Instagram, first time since January, with some cute caption about being excited for our romantic weekend. All her friends commented with heart emojis and couple goals and stuff. The same friends who know she's trying to replace me, the same ones who encouraged it. I've been talking to my lawyer, he's my friend, I'll call him Dave. This whole time, yeah, I got a lawyer. More on that later. When I told him about the trip, he actually thought it was perfect timing. We spent about 3 hours in his office, getting everything organized, all the screenshots from her laptop, the dating profiles, her new life planning folder. Still can't believe she actually named it that. The bank statements showing how I pay for literally everything while she saves her money, all of it. Got the divorce papers ready too. They're sitting in my briefcase right now. Mel keeps asking why I'm bringing work stuff on our romantic weekend. LOL, if she only knew. The weirdest part is watching her try so hard, like she's auditioning for the role of perfect wife or something. She kept talking about how excited she is to spend time with me, making all these plans for the weekend. Meanwhile, her dating apps are probably blowing up her phone. I know because I still check her browser history sometimes. Yeah, maybe that's wrong, but honestly, who cares at this point? Dave said I need to stay calm and stick to the plan. Easy for him to say. He's not the one watching his wife pretend everything's fine while knowing she's been planning to leave for months. But I'm managing. I even helped her pack the car earlier. She was all, "You've been so sweet lately." Yeah, just wait. The drive up to the lake house was weird. Mel was acting like we were on our honeymoon or something, kept trying to hold my hand while I drove, taking selfies for her Instagram, talking about all the couple's activities she planned. I just nodded and went along with it. The place was exactly what you'd expect. One of those massive modern houses with floor-to-ceiling windows everywhere. Probably costs more than I make in 2 months just for a weekend. Mel's eyes got all wide when we pulled up. She loves this kind of stuff, always sending me links to houses like this, saying goals. Meanwhile, I'm the one paying all our actual bills. Everyone else showed up around the same time. Jen and Mark got there first. Of course they did. Jen's probably been coaching Mel this whole time. Then Sarah and Pete, and finally Lisa and Rob, all standing around this huge kitchen island, talking about their jobs and vacation plans and whatever. Mel was in full show-off mode, kept touching my arm, laughing super loud at everything I said, telling everyone how amazing things have been lately. I caught Jen giving her these little nods, like good job or something. It made me feel sick watching it. We did dinner at this massive dining table, you know, the kind that's basically just for show because who has 12 people over for dinner regularly? Everyone's talking about their amazing lives and careers and stuff. After dinner, they all wanted to hang out on the deck. It was about 75 degrees out, perfect weather. The girls were taking pictures, Probably for their backup Instagram accounts. Yeah, Mel, I know about those too. The guys were doing that thing where they pretend to care about each other's jobs. I waited until everyone was settled in, then told them I had something special planned, something for all of us to watch. Mel looked so excited, probably thought I was going to play some sappy video about our relationship or something. Instead, I connected my laptop to the TV they had out there. The first thing that popped up? Mel's Tinder profile, the one where she calls herself separated. Then her nude photos she sent to guys. Then her whole new life planning folder. You guys should have seen her face. She tried to grab my laptop, but I moved away. I just started reading some of her messages out loud. The ones where she talks about being stuck with me, where she tells guys she's looking for someone more ambitious, where she plans meetups and uses her friends as alibis. The best part? Her friends' faces. Sarah literally got up and walked away. Jen, you know, the one who started all this with her "what if someone better came along" question, she just kept saying, "Oh my God," over and over. The guys all looked super uncomfortable. Pretty sure Mark was mentally checking his own wife's phone in his head. Mel tried everything. First, she screamed at me for going through her laptop. Funny how she forgot about privacy when she wanted to use my credit cards. Then she tried to say it wasn't what it looked like. It was exactly what it looked like. Then she started crying and saying I was trying to humiliate her. Nah, she did that to herself. I pulled out the divorce papers and put them on the table. I told her, "Remember when you let me borrow your laptop because mine broke? Thanks for that, by the way." Really opened my eyes. She kept trying to get her friends to back her up, but nobody would. Even Jen, who's usually ready to defend Mel no matter what, just sat there looking at her feet. Guess it's different when there's actual proof right in front of them. I grabbed my bag and told everyone I already paid my share of the rental, so they could stay and enjoy their weekend. Mel was full-on crying by then, trying to follow me to the car, saying she could explain everything. The last thing I heard before I got in my car was Sarah saying, "I can't believe you did this to him." Coming from Sarah, that's pretty rich, considering she was one of the ones laughing about me that night. After I left, my phone was blowing up with messages. Not just from Mel, but from her friends too. Lots of "I'm so sorry, I had no idea" type stuff. Yeah, right, you had every idea, you encouraged it. After her family found out, man, that was rough. They called me the day after everything happened. Turns out, Mel had been telling them I was the one checking out of the marriage, that I was distant and uninterested. Her mom was crying on the phone asking what went wrong. I went over to their house and showed them everything, all the screenshots, the dating profiles, her new life planning folder, everything. Her dad just sat there getting quieter and quieter. This guy who used to treat me like his own son, who always bragged about how lucky Mel was to find such a responsible guy, he couldn't even look at the screenshots after a while. When Mel tried to explain everything to them later, it went badly, really badly. Her dad basically said he didn't raise her to be this kind of person. Her mom just cried. They're still talking to her, they're her parents after all, but it's different now. Her dad hasn't spoken to me since that day, but he did send a text saying he was sorry and that I deserved better. That hurt more than I expected. Her friends? They all scattered like cockroaches when the lights come on. Jen tried to message me, saying she never meant for any of this to happen, and how she was just trying to be supportive of her friend. Yeah, super supportive, laughing about replacing your friend's husband. Mark, Jen's husband, actually called me to apologize, said he had no idea the girls talked about when they got together. Sure, buddy. Sarah and Lisa both unfriended Mel on everything. Guess they're worried their husbands might start wondering what they say during their girls' nights too. The really crazy part? Mel's sister Kay was furious with her. Not just because Mel used her as an alibi for meeting guys, but because Kay actually stood up for Mel to their parents at first. Told them there must be some explanation. Then she saw all the evidence and realized how many times Mel had lied to her face. They're not speaking now. As for Mel, she's staying with her cousin Emma in the city, the only family member who will still put up with her, I guess. She's been trying to message me constantly. First, it was angry stuff about how I humiliated her. Yeah, because I'm the one who made dating profiles while married. Then it was crying about how sorry she is and how she'll change. Now it's switched to trying to negotiate. Like somehow she thinks she deserves half of everything, even though I have proof she was planning to leave. Dave, my lawyer, says the divorce should be simple. All those screenshots of her planning to leave while living off my money, super helpful legally. She tried saying she deserved alimony because she got used to a certain lifestyle, but that fell apart when Dave showed her own messages about looking for a richer guy. Kind of hard to claim you need support when you're literally bragging to guys about your own secret savings. The house feels weird now. Mel came with her cousin to get some of her stuff last week. She kept trying to talk about how we could work this out while packing up her clothes. Wanted to know if she could take some furniture her parents gave us for our wedding. I told her to talk to Dave about it. She didn't like that. I'm doing okay, I think. It's crazy how different everything is now. 2 months ago, I was standing in my kitchen, listening to my wife tell her friends she wanted to upgrade from me. Now she's living in her cousin's spare room, trying to figure out how to afford her own place. Turns out, the better life she wanted isn't so easy when you actually have to pay for it yourself. The dating apps are still active. Her cousin's friends saw her profiles. Now she lists herself as recently separated and independent woman. Had to laugh at that last part. Real independent now that she actually has to pay her own bills. But a funny thing happened at the gym last week. There's this girl who works there. She's been helping me figure out proper form for exercises and stuff. We got talking after my workout one day. Ended up getting coffee. Turns out, she went through something similar with her ex last year. Not the exact same situation, but she gets it, you know? We've been texting a bit, nothing serious, just talking. She's cool, actually works for what she wants instead of expecting everything handed to her. I didn't think I'd be interested in dating so soon, but it's nice just talking to someone normal who doesn't play games. It made me realize something too. While Mel was out there looking for an upgrade, I was the one who actually ended up with something better. Someone who's honest about who they are. I actually have plans tonight. The gym girl is teaching me how to make sushi. Thanks for all the support, guys. Never thought I'd be posting about my marriage falling apart on Reddit. But sometimes the worst things lead to better places, I guess. Oh yeah, I canceled the Netflix account yesterday. The one Mel's probably still using at her cousin's place. Funny how I don't even care about that stuff anymore. I've got better things to focus on now.